You know, India is testing its missiles when Chinese spy ships appear in the Indian Ocean. Now, yesterday, China's spy missile tracking ship, the Yuan Wang 6, returned to the Indian Ocean region to snoop on what we assume are going to be Indian missile tests. And the last 6 years, China has sent 24 spying expeditions into the Indian Ocean. That's nearly as much as the remaining 6 countries, including India, which have sent only 26 expeditions into the Indian Ocean region. Now, China is shaping the maritime battle space in the IOR, as we call it. And I'm joined today on the show by Commander Arnab Das, founder director of the Maritime Research Centre. He's one of India's foremost advocates for underwater domain awareness. My colleague Nivriti Mohan, who's been tracking Chinese spy ships which are tracking our missile tests. Commander Das, welcome to the News9 Plus show.
Thank you so much for having me here.
Nivriti, I want to start by asking you, because you've put this documentary together, why the Indian Ocean region? Why are the Chinese so interested in the IOR? Tell our viewers.
Okay, as far as oceans are concerned, we often say that 80% of our oceans are not explored, and there is a saying that even Mars and Moon, surfaces of Mars and Moon are more explored than ocean surface or ocean seabed.
Right.
Coming to Indian Ocean region, it is very, very important for us, for India, because it is India's backyard, and any conflict or any uncertainty in this region affects India directly. And as far as China is concerned, China is dependent, Indian Ocean region is the trade route for Chinese.
Yes.
And 50% or more of the hydrocarbon transits through this region, and China is heavily dependent on Indian Ocean region for their
its
energy supplies as well.
That's the most important part when it comes to China. But you know, as for what they're doing there, I'm going to ask Commander Das this. Commander Das, you've been part of the documentary that Nivriti put together. The fact that the Chinese seem to be snooping on all 3 dimensions of the Indian Ocean, whether it's the seabed, the water, the surface of the sea, and the atmosphere when they're tracking our missile tests. Give us a breakdown of the entire Chinese expeditions over the last 6 years, which have intensified.
It's a very important question, and it's a very important dimension. See, if you look at today, Indo-Pacific strategic space is being talked about as the most critical area of engagement, right? I mean, there was a time when the Pacific and the Atlantic was important, but today, in the 21st century, it's the Indo-Pacific.
Yes.
But in the Indo-Pacific also, the Indo part of the Indo-Pacific becomes far more important, because India and China will interact here. There have been a lot of effort to understand the Pacific part of the Indo-Pacific.
Yes.
And there have been experiments like the Asia X that happened at the beginning of this century. There's a lot of data that is available there, or that has been generated at a certain point. But Indian Ocean, or the Indo part of the Indo-Pacific, is far less known.
Right.
So now there is an aggressive push by the Chinese to understand the Indian Ocean much better.
Right.
So on all the 3 dimensions, as you mentioned, they are trying to gather more information, and they're trying to understand this region better. Now, even for, whether it is for military or even for the deep ocean mission or the blue economy, if they have to deploy, I mean, I would like to say that 90% of the resources and the challenges exist below the surface of the water.
Right, absolutely.
So having said that, now you need to deploy your platforms, whether it is an AUV or whatever you need to deploy there.
Right.
That requires a very different kind of underwater domain awareness. I mean, I would like to also mention that USS Connecticut met with an accident in the South China Sea.
Yes.
See, latest submarine, or such a state-of-the-art submarine of the US Navy meets with such an embarrassment for but it also brings out the lack of UDA in this part of the world.
No, absolutely. Very important point there, Commander Das. The fact that, underwater domain awareness is so critical to submarine operations, and the fact that the USS Connecticut hit an underwater object which it wasn't aware of. So obviously they hadn't mapped that part of the South China Sea. But, Commander Das, the Chinese say that they're there for scientific purposes. Many of their vessels are not pure scientific they're not spy ships per se, but they seem to be for oceanographic data, they're hydrographic ships and all. But this trust deficit that not just India but the world has with China, How is that trust deficit fueling our suspicion of the kind of activities that they are engaged in the IOR? Break this point down for us.
Now, see, any underwater data or any data,
Yes.
is a strategic asset for any nation.
Right.
I mean, West has done it in the past. They have mapped the areas of interest, and once that data comes in, like let us say Indian Ocean, like you mentioned about 24 expeditions by China.
Yes.
Now they are doing this underwater expeditions to map the, the undersea to be able to deploy AUVs and any such
Right.
platforms.
Right.
Now, once that data is available to you, whether you are carrying out a mission for security or for blue economy, that is
Yes.
your national.
Absolutely.
But that data is the start point, right?
Right. Absolutely. The
If
data
you
is the
do not
start
have
point.
that
It's
data-
agnostic. Yes.
Yes. So that data is very important. And that's why if you see the UDA framework that we have built, the pooling of resources and synergize of effort is so much important.
Right.
And particularly when you talk about the global south, when there is always a resource crunch and,
Yes.
the political has to balance between socio-economic budget and the military budget, this will become a very, very important question. But once this data is collected and if it has
Right.
got a lot of relevance for the blue economy, it makes a lot more political sense.
Right. Absolutely.
So you cannot fault China on why they're doing this. I mean, and even the UNCLOS permits you to collect
Yes,
data
absolutely.
for-
The UNCLOS permits you to do that. So, which is what
you are
my
very
point
much
was
part
on
of
the
the-
trust deficit with China. But Commander Das, last question to you is that what must India do now? I mean, given the fact that, as you mentioned, that they are well within their rights to do whatever research they're doing. They can even snoop on our missile tests. There's nothing we can do about it. What can India really do to, let's say, deny China the intelligence advantage in the Indian Ocean region?
Simple. I mean, put boots on the ground. I mean, you have to do as much more capacity building,
Right.
as much more data collection. See, it's a war of capabilities.
Yes.
If you are better capable, then it itself becomes a deterrence.
Right.
If your adversary knows that you are better prepared or you are better capable, then that itself becomes a deterrent. You don't have to see. War should not be fought.
Right.
It should be avoided with better preparedness. I mean, that's
Right.
what it is.
Right, a war of capabilities, a war of preparedness. Thanks very much, Commander Das and Nivriti, for your views on Xi Jinping's spy ships, the surge of Chinese spy vessels into the Indian Ocean region. They are there even as we speak. It's a war of resources, it's a war of capabilities, and this is something that India cannot take lying down because our security could be threatened in the long term.
Streaming on News9 Plus. News is now content. Subscribe and get free vouchers.